Sam Hayes didn't expect her life to change the day she answered a job posting to care for Adrian Cole, a bitter millionaire bound to a wheelchair. But when sparks of hope and love ignite between them, it's clear they'll either heal together or break all over again. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Sam Hayes stared at the pink slip in her hands, her heart sinking as she read the words, "Position terminated," for the third time. The hospital's budget cuts had claimed another victim, and this time it was her part-time nursing job. She crumpled the paper and threw it in the trash, fighting back tears. She couldn't break down now, not when her 7-year-old daughter Lily would be home from school in less than an hour. The tiny apartment they called home felt even smaller as Sam paced back and forth calculating bills in her head. Rent was due in 2 weeks, and Lily needed new shoes for school. The child support checks from her ex-husband had stopped coming months ago, and her calls to his lawyer went straight to voicemail. "Mummy!" Lily's voice rang through the apartment as she burst through the door, her backpack covered in colorful pins and her brown curls bouncing with each step. "Look what? I made in art class today." Sam pushed aside her worries and plastered on a smile. "Show me, sweetie." She knelt down to examine the painted macaroni artwork, praising her daughter's creativity, while her mind raced with job possibilities. That night, after tucking Lily into bed with 2 bedtime stories and an extra tight hug, Sam opened her laptop. The job listings were disappointing, mostly minimum wage positions or roles requiring years of experience she didn't have. She was about to close the browser when a new posting caught her eye. Urgent, private caregiver needed, medical background preferred, competitive salary, immediate start possible. The posting was for a position caring for Adrian Cole, a name Sam recognized from local news. He was the millionaire adventurer who'd made headlines 6 months ago after a car accident left him paralyzed. The salary listed made her eyes widen. It was nearly triple what she'd been making at the hospital. Too good to be true, Sam muttered, but she clicked apply anyway. What did she have to lose? The response came faster than she expected. By morning, she had an email requesting an interview that afternoon at the Cole estate. Sam called her neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez, who agreed to watch Lily after school, and spent an hour ironing her best blouse. The Cole estate was everything she'd imagined and more. Iron gates opened to reveal perfectly manicured gardens and a mansion that made her apartment building look like a dollhouse. Sam gripped her steering wheel tighter, trying to calm her nerves as she parked her beat-up Honda next to a row of luxury cars. A stern-faced woman in an expensive suit met her at the door. "I'm Margaret Wells, Mr. Cole's house manager," she said, looking Sam up and down. "Follow me." As they walked through the mansion, Margaret explained the situation. "Mr. Cole has gone through 7 caregivers in the past 3 months. He can be challenging. The position requires assistance with all daily activities, including personal care. Many find it overwhelming." Sam straightened her shoulders. "I've worked with difficult patients before. I'm not easily scared off." Margaret's expression softened slightly. "We'll see. Mr. Cole is in the study." The study was a massive room lined with bookshelves and windows overlooking the garden. A wheelchair faced one of the windows, and Sam could see the back of a man's head, dark hair streaked with premature gray. "Mr. Cole, this is Samantha Hayes for the caregiver position," Margaret announced. The wheelchair turned slowly, revealing a man who looked nothing like the smiling photos Sam had seen in news articles. Adrian Cole's face was gaunt, his eyes hard and suspicious. A thin scar ran along his jawline, a reminder of the accident that had changed his life. "Another one?" His voice was cold. "How long do you think this one will last, Margaret? A week? Maybe 2? Sam felt her cheeks flush, but she held her ground. "Mr. Cole, I'm not here to be judged by your past experiences. I'm here because I'm qualified, and because I need this job. If you'd like to discuss my credentials, I'm happy to do. So if you'd rather waste time trying to intimidate me, I'll save us both the trouble and leave now." The room fell silent. Margaret looked mortified, but Adrian's expression changed. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe even respect. "Sit down, Ms. Hayes," he said finally. "Tell me why." "I should hire you." Sam took a seat across from him, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "Because I won't quit when things get hard. Because I've spent the last 7 years raising my daughter alone while working and studying. And because I suspect you're tired of people treating you like you're made of glass." Adrian leaned forward slightly. "You have a daughter?" "Yes." "Lily. She's 7. Single mother?" "Yes." Adrian studied her for a long moment. The job requires living on site 5 days a week. What about your daughter? I've already spoken with my neighbor. She's retired and loves Lily like a granddaughter. She's willing to help if I get this position. Sam hadn't actually had this conversation yet, but she knew Mrs. Rodriguez would agree. She had to. Adrian wheeled his chair closer. The work is demanding. Personal care, physical therapy, medication management, early mornings, late nights. Still interested? Yes. Even after my charming welcome? Sam allowed herself a small smile. I've handled worse. Adrian turned to Margaret. Get the paperwork ready. He looked back at Sam. You start Monday. Don't make me regret this. As Sam drove home that evening, her hands were shaking. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. The salary would be enough to move them to a better apartment, to start saving for Lily's college fund, maybe even to take some nursing classes herself. But as she thought about Adrian's bitter eyes and the challenge ahead, she wondered if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. 7 caregivers in 3 months. What was she getting herself into? That night, as she watched Lily sleep, Sam made a promise to herself and her daughter. She would make this work. She had to, because sometimes the hardest roads led to the best destinations. And she had a feeling this road was going to be very hard indeed. Sam's first day at the coal estate started earlier than she'd expected. At 5:30 a.m., her phone buzzed with a text from Adrian. Where are you? Physical therapy. Starts at 6. She rushed to get ready, grateful that Mrs. Rodriguez had agreed to let Lily sleep over. When she arrived at the mansion, Adrian was already in his wheelchair by the front door, his face dark with anger. You're late, he snapped. It's 5:55, Sam replied, checking her watch. And my contract says I start at 6. Your contract says you're responsible for getting me ready for physical therapy. That means being here early enough to help me dress and prepare. Adrian's voice was cold. Or did you think I did all that myself? Sam felt her face flush. He was right. She should have thought this through better. I apologize. It won't happen again. Save your apologies. Just help me change into my exercise clothes. The next hour was a crash course in everything Sam's nursing training hadn't prepared her for. Adrian's body was strong from years of outdoor adventures, but his paralysis made every movement a challenge. He hated asking for help, and his frustration showed in sharp comments and impatient sighs. The physical therapist, Mike, arrived right at 6. He was a cheerful man in his 50s who seemed immune to Adrian's bad mood. New caregiver, he asked Sam. Don't worry, you'll get the hang of it. Adrian here just likes to test people's limits. I'm right here, Adrian growled, and I'd like to start my session. Sam watched as Mike worked with Adrian, noting the exercises and techniques. She'd need to help Adrian practice between sessions. What struck her most was how Mike treated Adrian, not with pity or excessive gentleness, but with matter-of-fact respect. After therapy, Sam helped Adrian shower and dress. It was awkward for both of them, but she kept her movements efficient and professional. I know this isn't easy, she said, as she helped him into a fresh shirt, but it'll get better with practice. Better? Adrian laughed bitterly. Nothing about this gets better. Do you know what I was doing a year ago? Leading climbing expeditions in the Himalayas? Now I can't even button my own shirt. No, you can't, Sam agreed, meeting his eyes. But you can run a multi-million-dollar company from your wheelchair. You can still make a difference in the world. You just have to decide if you're going to focus on what you can't do or what you can. Adrian stared at her, surprised by her directness. Before he could respond, Margaret appeared in the doorway. Mr. Cole, the board meeting starts in 20 minutes. The morning passed in a blur of medications, meals, and meetings. Sam learned the layout of the house, memorized Adrian's schedule, and started to understand the rhythm of his days. She also learned that his sharp tongue wasn't reserved just for her. He was equally harsh with his business associates, especially those who treated him differently since the accident. During a break between meetings, Sam's phone buzzed. It was a text from Mrs. Rodriguez. Lily woke up crying once her mommy. Sam's heart clenched. She glanced at Adrian, who was reviewing documents on his laptop. I need to make a quick call, she said. Personal matter. Your daughter? Adrian asked, not looking up. Yes, she's having a hard morning. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Take 15 minutes. We can delay the next meeting. Sam stepped into the hallway and called Lily. Hi, sweetheart. Are you okay? I miss you, Mommy, Lily sniffled. When are you coming home? I'll be home for dinner tomorrow, remember? And Mrs. Rodriguez said you could help her make cookies today. But I want you. Sam closed her eyes, fighting back tears. I know, baby. But remember what we talked about. Mommy has to work so we can have nice things, like those new shoes you wanted. I don't want new shoes. I want you. The conversation continued for several minutes until Lily calmed down. When Sam returned to Adrian's study, she found him watching her intently. Everything okay? He asked. It will be. She's just adjusting. Adrian wheeled closer to her. Must be hard leaving her. It is. But we all do what we have to do. Is that what this is to you? Something you have to do? Sam thought carefully before answering. Right now? Yes. But I hope it becomes more than that. I hope I can actually help you, Mr. Cole. Adrian, he said suddenly, if you're going to see me at my worst every day, you might as well use my first name. The rest of the day was filled with more challenges. Adrian refused to eat lunch, claiming he wasn't hungry. He snapped at Sam when she insisted he take his medications on schedule. By evening, they were both exhausted. As Sam prepared to leave, for the night, Adrian called her back. Tomorrow, he said, be here at 5:30. I will. And Sam? His voice was quieter now. Thank you for not quitting today. Sam smiled slightly. The day's not over yet. On the drive to Mrs. Rodriguez's house, Sam thought about the day's events. Adrian Cole was difficult, bitter, and often cruel. But she'd seen something else too. Moments of vulnerability. Flashes of the man he used to be. And maybe, just maybe, that man wasn't completely gone. When she picked up Lily, her daughter ran into her arms, covering her face with sticky, cookie-scented kisses. I love you, Mommy, she said, even if you have to work. Sam held her daughter tight, thinking about Adrian's words. No, the day wasn't over yet. In fact, she had a feeling this was just the beginning. 2 weeks into her new job, Sam had settled into a routine. She arrived at 5:30 every morning, helped Adrian with his exercises, and managed his busy schedule of meetings and medical appointments. Though he was still difficult, they'd reached a kind of truce. He'd stopped making cutting remarks about her capabilities, and she'd learned to read his moods better. But everything changed on a rainy Wednesday morning. Sam arrived to find Adrian, already awake, his face pale and drawn. I don't feel right, he admitted when she entered his bedroom. This alone was unusual. Adrian never complained about his health. What's wrong? Sam asked, immediately switching into nurse mode. Pain in my back, different from usual, and I'm having trouble breathing. Sam checked his vital signs, frowning at his elevated heart rate and temperature. When she pressed gently on his lower back, he winced. I'm calling Dr. Phillips, she said, reaching for her phone. No, Adrian snapped. I have an important board meeting today. I can't miss it. You're running a fever, and these symptoms could indicate a serious infection. The meeting can wait. Adrian's face hardened. I don't pay you to make my decisions. I'm going to that meeting. Actually, you do pay me to make medical decisions, and I'm making one now. Sam dialed Dr. Phillips's number, ignoring Adrian's protests. The doctor arrived 30 minutes later. His examination confirmed Sam's fears. Adrian had a severe urinary tract infection that had spread to his kidneys, a common but dangerous complication for people with spinal cord injuries. He needs to be hospitalized, Dr. Phillips said. The infection is severe enough to require intravenous antibiotics. Adrian's face went from angry to scared in an instant. No hospitals, he said firmly. I can't. Sam saw real fear in his eyes for the first time. Dr. Phillips pulled her aside and spoke quietly. He needs proper medical care. If he refuses hospitalization, he could develop sepsis. What if we brought the care here? Sam asked. I'm a trained nurse. If you ordered the equipment and medication, I could administer the IV antibiotics. Dr. Phillips considered this. It would require round-the-clock monitoring, at least for the first 48 hours. Are you prepared for that? Yes, Sam said without hesitation. She'd need to make arrangements for Lily, but this was too important. After some discussion, they convinced Adrian to agree to home treatment. Within hours, the necessary medical equipment arrived, and Sam set up a makeshift hospital room in Adrian's bedroom. As she inserted the IV line into Adrian's arm, her movements gentle but sure, he finally spoke. Why are you doing this? Because it's my job, she replied, taping the line in place. No, your job was to call an ambulance and let the hospital deal with me. Why are you taking this on? Sam finished securing the IV before answering. Because you're scared of hospitals. Because you've lost enough control over your life already. And because I think you deserve to have someone in your corner. Adrian looked away, but not before Sam saw the moisture in his eyes. "I haven't been in a hospital since the accident," he said quietly. I can't be that helpless again." "I know," Sam said simply. "That's why I'm here." The next 2 days were intense. Sam barely slept, monitoring Adrian's vital signs and administering medications. She called Mrs. Rodriguez, who agreed to keep Lily for a few days. Margaret helped by managing Adrian's business calls and rescheduling his meetings. The fever made Adrian alternate between periods of harsh lucidity and vulnerable confusion. During one feverish episode, he grabbed Sam's hand. "Catherine," he called out, "is that you?" "No, it's Sam," she said gently. "Who's Catherine?" "My fiancée," he mumbled. "Ex-fiancée. She left after everything changed. Couldn't handle it," she said. "Couldn't handle me." Sam felt a surge of anger toward this unknown woman. "Her loss," she said firmly, adjusting his blankets. "Everyone leaves," Adrian whispered, his eyes closing. "Everyone always leaves." "I'm not leaving," Sam promised. "I'm right here." On the second night, Adrian's fever finally broke. Sam was dozing in a chair beside his bed when his voice woke her. "You're still here," he said, his voice hoarse but clear. "I told you I would be." Adrian studied her face, noting the dark circles under her eyes and her rumpled clothes. "You look terrible," he said, but his tone was different, almost gentle. Sam laughed softly. "Thanks, you're not looking so great yourself." "Sam?" His voice was serious now. "Thank you for not sending me to the hospital, for understanding." "You're welcome, but you need to start taking better care of yourself." "No more skipping medications or ignoring symptoms. Are you going to make that a condition of your continued employment?" "No," Sam said, standing to check his IV. "I'm making it a condition of my continued friendship." Adrian looked startled. "Is that what we are? Friends? Well, I've seen you at your worst, held your hand through a fever, and learned about your ex-fiancée. I think we're a little past the strictly professional relationship, don't you?" A small smile, the first real one Sam had seen, crossed Adrian's face. "I suppose we are." Later that day, when Adrian was sleeping peacefully and his vital signs were finally stable, Sam called to check on Lily. "Mommy," her daughter's voice came through the phone, "Mrs. Rodriguez is teaching me to make empanadas." "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Are you being good?" "Yes. When are you coming home?" "Soon, baby. My friend is sick and I need to help him get better. Like when you make me soup when I'm sick." Sam looked at Adrian's sleeping form. "Yes, exactly like that." After hanging up, Sam noticed Adrian watching her. "You should go home," he said. "See your daughter. Margaret can watch me for a while." "Are you sure?" "Yes, and Sam, thank you for calling me your friend. It's been a long time since anyone has." As Sam drove home that evening, she realized something had fundamentally shifted between them. The crisis had cracked Adrian's hard exterior, revealing the wounded but worthy man beneath, and somehow, without meaning to, she'd started to care about that man. She just hoped she wouldn't regret it. The weeks following Adrian's illness brought subtle but significant changes to life at the Cole estate. Adrian's sharp edges had softened, at least with Sam. He asked about Lily during their morning routine and even suggested converting one of the spare rooms into a play area for when she visited. "You don't have to do that," Sam said as she helped him with his exercises one morning. "I know," Adrian replied, grimacing as he stretched, "but this house could use some life in it. And maybe," he hesitated, "maybe she could visit sometimes if you want." Before Sam could respond, Margaret appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Cole, your brother James is here." Adrian's face immediately hardened. "I didn't know he was coming. He says it's urgent." James Cole strode into the room like he owned it. He looked like an older, more polished version of Adrian, wearing an expensive suit and a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Little brother," James said warmly, but Sam noticed Adrian's shoulders tense at the words. "We need to talk. About the company." "We have nothing to discuss," Adrian replied coldly. "The board approved my recovery plan last month." "Yes, about that." James glanced at Sam. "Could we have some privacy?" "Sam stays," Adrian said firmly. "She's part of my medical team, and I need her here for my exercises." James's smile tightened. "Fine. The board is concerned, Adrian. Your condition makes many of them nervous. They're wondering if it might be better to have someone more able handle the day-to-day operations." "You mean you?" Adrian's voice was dangerously quiet. "I am the logical choice. And let's be honest, you're not the man you used to be." Sam saw Adrian's hands grip his wheelchair arm so hard his knuckles turned white. Without thinking, she stepped forward. Mr. Cole is perfectly capable of running his company. His mind and business judgment weren't affected by the accident. James turned to her, his expression cold. "And you are?" "Sam Hayes, Mr. Cole's private nurse and caregiver." "Ah, yes, the new hire. Tell me, Ms. Hayes, what exactly are your qualifications to speak about business matters?" "None," Sam admitted, "but I know your brother. I've watched him run this company for weeks, making decisions and leading meetings. His wheelchair doesn't affect his ability to be CEO." "How touching," James sneered. "You've certainly got her well trained, Adrian. Does she always fight your battles for you?" "Get out." Adrian's voice shook with anger. "Get out of my house. We're not done discussing this." "Yes, we are. And if you try to take my company, I'll remind the board about the Jensen scandal. I'm sure they'd love to hear the full story." James's face paled slightly. Without another word, he turned and left. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Adrian wheeled to the window, his back to Sam. "I suppose you want to know about the Jensen scandal?" "No," Sam said simply. "That's your business. I just want to know if you're okay." Adrian turned to face her, surprise evident in his expression. "You're not curious?" "Of course I'm curious. But you're entitled to your privacy. We all have things we'd rather not talk about." Adrian was quiet for a moment. "James has always wanted control of the company. When our father died, he was furious that I got the CEO position. He was the older son, but Dad knew he couldn't be trusted. The Jensen scandal proved that. Your brother seems like a snake." "He is. He's been waiting for an opportunity like this." "My accident," Adrian's voice caught. "He sees it as his chance." Sam moved to stand beside his wheelchair. "Then we won't let him take it." "We?" "Yes, we. You're not alone in this." "Adrian." He looked up at her, his expression vulnerable. "Why do you care? This isn't your fight." "Because you're my friend. And because I've seen too many bullies win in my life. I won't stand by and watch another one succeed." The next few days were tense. James's visit had shaken Adrian more than he wanted to admit. He threw himself into work, pushing himself too hard. Sam worried about his health, but knew he needed to feel in control. One evening, as Sam was preparing to leave, Adrian called her back. "Bring Lily tomorrow," he said suddenly. "For dinner, if you want to." Sam hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Yes, I'd like to meet her, and that playroom is just sitting there empty." The next evening, Sam brought Lily to the mansion. Her daughters' eyes went wide at the sight of the huge house. "You work here, Mummy?" "Yes, sweetie, and this is my friend, Mr. Cole." Adrian had clearly made an effort. The dining room table was set with kid-friendly foods, and there was a stack of board games in the corner. But what surprised Sam most was how natural Adrian was with Lily. "Do you like art?" he asked her. When Lily nodded enthusiastically, he smiled. "I have something to show you." He led them to a room Sam had never seen before. It was filled with paintings and art supplies. "This was my mother's studio," Adrian explained. "She loved teaching children to paint. Maybe you'd like to use it sometimes." Lily's face lit up. "Can I, Mommy? Please?" Sam looked at Adrian, seeing past his confident exterior to the uncertain question in his eyes. He wasn't just offering the room to Lily, he was offering them both a place in his life. "Yes," she said softly. "I think that would be wonderful." Later that night, after Lily had fallen asleep on one of the plush sofas and Sam had carried her to the car, Adrian caught her hand. "Thank you," he said, "for trusting me with her. Thank you for wanting to know her." As Sam drove home, she thought about how much had changed. Adrian Cole wasn't just her employer anymore. He wasn't even just her friend. He was becoming something more, something that both thrilled and terrified her. And somewhere in the city, James Cole was plotting his next move, unaware that his brother had found something worth fighting for. Not just his company, but a chance at a new kind of life. "Someone's been accessing my private files." Adrian's announcement broke the peaceful morning routine. Sam looked up from where she was organizing his medications. "What kind of files?" "Company records, project proposals, everything." Adrian wheeled back and forth, something he did when agitated. "And 3 board members just cancelled their one-on-one meetings with me. James is making his move." Sam set down the pill organizer. "Can you prove it's him?" "Not yet, but I know my brother." Adrian ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "He's trying to make me look incompetent, like I can't handle the company anymore. Then we'll prove him wrong." Sam pulled up a chair next to his wheelchair. "What do you need?" Adrian looked at her with surprise. "This isn't your problem, Sam. You don't have to get involved. I thought we settled this already. We're in this together." She touched his arm gently. "Now what's the plan?" Before Adrian could answer, his phone buzzed. His face darkened as he read the message. "Emergency board meeting, tomorrow morning." He looked up at Sam. "James called it. He's making his move faster than I expected." Then, "We'll work faster. What time is your last meeting today?" "4, why?" "Because after that we're going through every file, every record, everything that could help you fight this. And you're going to teach me enough about your business so I can help." Adrian stared at her for a long moment. "You'd do that? Spend your evening going through boring business documents? Well, it beats watching reality TV." Sam smiled. "Plus, Mrs. Rodriguez loves having Lily for sleepovers. Says it makes her feel young again." That evening, Adrian's study looked like a war room. Papers covered every surface, and Sam had commandeered a whiteboard to make notes. Adrian watched in amazement as she organized years of business records into clear, logical patterns. "There," Sam said, circling something on the board. "These 3 projects, James tried to block them, but they ended up being your biggest successes. We can use that. You're surprisingly good at this," Adrian observed. "Single motherhood teaches you a lot about strategy and organization." Sam stretched, her back stiff from hours of work. "Plus, I always wanted to go back to school, get my business degree, just never had the chance." "Why not?" Sam shrugged. "Life, bills. Being a mom comes first." Adrian was quiet for a moment. "You could still do it, you know. Go back to school. Maybe someday." Sam turned back to the files, but Adrian caught her hand. "Sam," his voice was soft. "Look at me." She turned, suddenly very aware of how close they were. In the soft evening light, Adrian's eyes were intense, searching her face. "You're amazing," he said quietly. "The way you handle everything. Lily, this job now helping me with the company. You deserve to have your dreams too." Sam's heart beat faster. "Adrian!" The moment was broken by Margaret clearing her throat from the doorway. "Excuse me, Mr. Cole. There's a call from Tokyo. They say it's urgent." Adrian reluctantly let go of Sam's hand. "We'll finish this later?" "Of course." Sam started gathering the papers, trying to calm her racing pulse. What had just happened? What had almost happened? The next morning, Sam helped Adrian dress in his best suit. His face was tense but determined. "Whatever happens in that meeting," he said as she adjusted his tie, "I want you to know how grateful I am. For everything. Save the speeches for the board," Sam replied, smoothing his collar. "You're going to win this." As Adrian wheeled toward the boardroom, Sam caught his arm. "Wait." On impulse, she leaned down and kissed his cheek. "For luck." Adrian's eyes widened, and a faint color rose in his cheeks. Before he could respond, James's voice came from down the hall. "Little brother, ready to face reality?" Sam watched as Adrian's expression hardened, all softness vanishing. He wheeled into the boardroom, back straight, head high, through the glass walls. She could see James standing at the head of the table, looking smugly confident. Hours passed. Sam tried to focus on her regular duties, but her mind kept drifting to the boardroom. Finally, the doors opened. Board members filed out, many nodding respectfully to Adrian. James was the last to leave, his face tight with barely controlled rage. "This isn't over," he hissed as he passed Adrian. "Yes, it is," Adrian replied calmly. "The board has spoken. Try anything like this again and I'll make sure everyone knows about Jensen. All of it." After James stormed out, Sam rushed to Adrian's side. "What happened?" Adrian's smile was tired but triumphant. "Let's just say having actual proof of success beats baseless accusations of incompetence." He took her hand. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Of course you could have. You're stronger than you think." "Maybe." Adrian's thumb traced circles on her palm. "But I'm better with you beside me." The air between them crackled with unspoken words. Sam knew they were approaching a line, one that could change everything. The practical part of her mind screamed that this was dangerous, that mixing business with pleasure never ended well. But her heart was already far past caring about practicality. "Adrian," she started, but he shook his head. "Not here. Have dinner with me tonight, just us. There's something I need to tell you." Sam hesitated. "What about Lily? Bring her. Margaret can watch her in the playroom. Please, Sam, it's important." Looking into his eyes, Sam knew she couldn't say no. More importantly, she didn't want to. "Okay," she said softly, "tonight." As she walked away to start her afternoon duties, Sam's mind raced. Something had shifted between them, something that couldn't be undone. The question was, were they ready for what came next? In his office, Adrian watched her go, his heart lighter than it had been in months. He had won the battle for his company, yes, but he had a feeling he was about to fight an even more important battle, one for his heart, and this time he couldn't afford to lose. Sam stood in front of her closet, feeling like a teenager before her first date. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, pushing aside another outfit. "It's just dinner." But they both knew it wasn't just dinner. Something was going to change tonight. She could feel it in the way Adrian had looked at her, in the way her own heart raced whenever she thought about it. "Mommy, are you ready yet?" Lily called from the doorway, already dressed in her favorite purple dress. "You said we were having dinner with Mr. Adrian." Sam smiled at her daughter's excitement. Over the past weeks, Lily had grown attached to Adrian, spending hours in the art studio he'd given her access to. Sometimes Sam would find them there together, Adrian teaching Lily about different painting techniques or just listening to her chatter about school. Finally settling on a simple blue dress, one she'd bought on sale months ago and never had occasion to wear, Sam grabbed her purse. "Okay, sweetheart, let's go." When they arrived at the mansion, Margaret met them at the door. She was smiling, which was unusual enough to make Sam nervous. "Mr. Cole is waiting in the garden," she said, holding out her hand to Lily. "And I believe there's a new set of paints in the studio that need testing. Would you like to help me with that, Lily?" Lily looked at Sam for permission. "Go ahead," Sam said, "but be good for Margaret." As Sam walked through the house to the back garden, her heart pounding, she could hear Lily's excited voice fading down the hallway, chattering about what she wanted to paint. The garden had been transformed. Tiny lights twinkled in the trees, and a small table was set for two near the fountain. Adrian was there wearing a dark suit that made him look more handsome than ever. When he saw her, his eyes widened. "You look beautiful," he said softly. Sam blushed. "You don't look so bad yourself. I hope you don't mind eating out here. The evening was too nice to stay inside." "It's perfect." Sam sat down in the chair he indicated, noticing that the table was positioned so they could sit, comfortably facing each other, his wheelchair fitting perfectly in the space. A server, Sam hadn't even known Adrian had kitchen staff, appeared with wine and appetizers. The food was delicious, but Sam barely tasted it. There was a tension in the air, an anticipation that made it hard to focus on anything else. Finally, after their plates were cleared, Adrian spoke. "There's something I need to tell you about Catherine." Sam's heart sank a little at the mention of his ex-fiancée. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. Because you need to understand why." "I've been so—" He paused, searching for the right word. "So guarded." Adrian wheeled slightly away from the table, looking out at the garden. "Catherine and I were together for 3 years before the accident. She was beautiful, sophisticated, exactly the kind of woman everyone expected me to marry. But looking back, I think I was more in love with the idea of her than who she really was." He turned back to Sam. "After the accident, she tried, or at least she pretended to try. But every time she looked at me, all she saw was the wheelchair. All she could think about was what I couldn't do anymore, not what I could. One day I overheard her talking to her friend on the phone. She said she couldn't spend her life playing nurse to a cripple." Sam's hands clenched in her lap. "She didn't deserve you. Maybe not. But it broke something in me, made me bitter, angry. I pushed everyone away because I couldn't stand to see that look in their eyes. Pity mixed with disappointment, like I was less of a man." "Adrian, please, let me finish." He moved closer, taking her hand. "Then you came along, and you never looked at me that way. You pushed back when I was difficult. You saw past the wheelchair to who I really am. You made me want to be better." Sam's heart was racing. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I'm falling in love with you, Sam Hayes, and it terrifies me." Sam's breath caught. "Why does it terrify you?" "Because I'm your employer. Because you deserve someone whole, someone who can dance with you and run with your daughter. Because my life is complicated, and James won't stop causing trouble. Because—" Sam stood up and moved to kneel beside his wheelchair, placing her hand on his cheek. "Stop, just stop." He fell silent, looking at her with vulnerable eyes. "First of all," she said firmly, "you are whole. Your wheelchair doesn't define you. Second, I don't want someone who can dance with me or run with Lily. I want someone who teaches her about art and makes her feel special. I want someone who sees me, really sees me, not just as a nurse or a single mother, but as a woman with dreams and hopes." "Sam," I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered, and it terrifies me just as much. What if I'm not enough for your world? What if... Adrian silenced her with a kiss. It was gentle at first, then deeper, filled with all the emotions they'd been holding back. When they finally parted, they were both breathing heavily. You are more than enough, Adrian said, his forehead resting against hers. You're everything. A giggle from nearby made them both turn. Lily stood at the garden door with Margaret, her hands clasped over her mouth, but her eyes dancing with joy. I believe someone was supposed to be painting, Adrian called out, but he was smiling. Lily ran to them, throwing her arms around both their necks. Does this mean we get to stay? She asked hopefully. Sam looked at Adrian, seeing her own future, reflected in his eyes. What do you think? She asked him. Ready for some permanent house guests? I think, Adrian said, pulling them both close, that this house has been waiting for you two all along. Later that night, as Sam drove home, with a sleeping Lily in the back seat, she thought about how life could change in an instant. Sometimes, like Adrian's accident, those changes brought pain and loss, but sometimes they brought unexpected joy and second chances. Her phone buzzed with a text from Adrian. I already miss you both. Come back tomorrow? Sam smiled, typing. Her reply, always. But as she pulled into her apartment complex, she saw a familiar car parked in the shadows. James Cole stepped out, his face illuminated by the streetlights. Ms. Hayes, he said smoothly, we need to talk about your relationship with my brother. Sam's happiness froze. She had a feeling their fairy tale was about to face its biggest test yet. How much? James Cole's voice cut through the night air like ice. Sam instinctively glanced at Lily, sleeping in the back seat. How much for what? To leave, end things with Adrian, disappear. James pulled out a checkbook. Name your price. Anger rose in Sam's throat. I'm not for sale, Mr. Cole, and neither are my feelings for your brother. James laughed, but there was no humor in it. Everyone has a price, Ms. Hayes. Let me be clear. You're a nobody, a nurse who got lucky. Do you really think you belong in Adrian's world, at charity galas, board meetings, society events? I belong with Adrian. That's all that matters. How naive. James stepped closer. Let me paint you a picture. Tomorrow, every newspaper in the city will run a story about the gold-digging caregiver who seduced her wealthy, disabled employer. Your nursing license will be questioned. Your daughter's father might even hear about it. Wouldn't it be awful if someone suggested you were an unfit mother? Sam's hands shook, but her voice remained steady. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you a choice. Take the money and leave, or watch your life fall apart. He held out a check. Think about your daughter, Ms. Hayes. What's best for her? Before Sam could respond, another voice cut through the darkness. I'd step away from her if I were you, James. Adrian wheeled forward from the shadows, Margaret standing beside him. His face was dark with fury. James spun around. Brother, what a surprise. Drop the act. Adrian's voice was cold. I heard everything. How did you really think I wouldn't have security watching Sam's apartment after your stunt at the board meeting? Adrian moved closer to Sam. I know you, James. I knew you'd try something like this. I'm trying to protect you, James insisted. Can't you see she's using you? The only person trying to use me is you. Adrian pulled out his phone. Margaret, would you play that recording, please? Margaret pressed play, and James's voice filled the night air. Once we get rid of the nurse, Adrian will be vulnerable. Another accident, a few missed medications. It won't take much to convince the board he's incompetent. James's face went white. Where did you get that? You really should check your office for bugs more carefully. Adrian's smile was dangerous. Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave. You're going to resign from the board. And if you ever come near Sam or Lily again, this recording goes public. You wouldn't dare. It would damage the company. Try me. The brothers stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, James crumpled the check and threw it down. You're making a mistake, he spat. She'll never fit in our world. Your world, Adrian corrected. Not mine, not anymore. They watched as James got in his car and drove away. As soon as he was gone, Adrian reached for Sam's hand. Are you okay? Sam was trembling. He threatened Lily. I know, I'm so sorry. Adrian pulled her closer. I should have known he'd do something like this. How did you know to come? After I texted you, something felt wrong. I called my security team to check on you, and they saw James waiting. Adrian looked ashamed. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the security. I just wanted to protect you, like you protected me from the recording. Adrian's face fell. You're angry. No, Sam knelt beside his wheelchair. I'm grateful. But Adrian, James was right about one thing. I don't belong in your world. Sam, let me finish. I don't belong in that world of galas and society events. I'm just a nurse, a single mom. I don't know how to be what you need in public. I don't need you to be anything but yourself. Adrian cupped her face in his hands. Do you know what I see when I look at you? I see strength, grace, a woman who loves fiercely and lives honestly. That's worth more than all the society connections in the world. But your life, your position, can handle some gossip. Trust me, being the disabled Cole brother has already given them plenty to talk about. His thumb wiped away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. The question is, can you handle it? The attention, the rumors, the James Coles of the world? Sam looked at Lily, still sleeping peacefully in the car. Then at Margaret, who had become more friend than employee. Finally, at Adrian, whose eyes held nothing but love and concern. As long as we face it together, she said softly. Adrian smiled. Always. He glanced at the car. Why don't you both stay at the house tonight? It's late and I think we could all use the comfort of being together. Later, after Lily had been tucked into what was becoming her regular room at the mansion, Sam and Adrian sat in his study. The fire crackled softly, casting warm shadows on the walls. I should have told you about the security, Adrian said, and the recording. I'm not used to having someone to share burdens with. I understand. Sam curled up closer to his wheelchair. But no more secrets. No more trying to protect each other alone. No more secrets, Adrian agreed. Though I do have one more thing to tell you. Sam tensed slightly. What is it? I've been thinking about making some changes to the company, starting a foundation for single parents who want to continue their education. He smiled at her, surprised. Look, someone recently reminded me that everyone deserves a chance at their dreams. Adrian, the paperwork's already drawn up. I'd like you to run it, not because you're my girlfriend, but because you understand what these families need. What do you say? Sam's heart swelled. This was Adrian, always finding ways to turn challenges into opportunities, to make something good out of difficult situations. I say yes, she whispered, leaning in to kiss him, to all of it. Outside, the city lights twinkled like stars. James Cole might have tried to price their love, but some things were beyond value. In that moment, holding each other close, they both knew they'd found something worth any price, a love that made them stronger together than they ever were apart. But life rarely lets happiness go unchallenged for long, and in the morning's paper, a headline would bring a new storm. Cole Empire scandal, the hidden truth about Adrian Cole's accident. James might have lost this battle, but the war was far from over. The morning paper landed on Adrian's desk like a bomb. Sam watched his face as he read the headline. Cole Empire scandal, the hidden truth about Adrian Cole's accident. Adrian? She said softly. What does it say? His hands shook as he held the paper. It wasn't an accident, he said, his voice hollow. The car. Someone tampered with the brakes. Sam's heart stopped. What? According to this, there was an investigation. They found evidence of tampering, but it was buried, paid off. He looked up at her, his eyes haunted. James knew. He knew all along. Sam took the paper, scanning the article. It was all there. Police reports, witness statements, even photos of the damaged brake lines. Why would he release this now? Because he has nothing left to lose. Adrian wheeled to the window, his shoulders tense. And because he knows the truth is worse than any lie he could tell. What do you mean? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. I knew too. Not at first, but I found out during my recovery. The investigating officer came to see me, showed me the evidence. Why didn't you say anything? Because I knew who did it. Adrian's voice cracked. It was Catherine, my fiancée. Sam felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. Your fiancée tried to kill you. Adrian turned to face her, his eyes filled with pain. She was having an affair with James. They planned it together. The accident was supposed to kill me, leaving James in control of the company. When I survived, he laughed bitterly. Well, you saw how that worked out. But why didn't you turn them in? Proof the investigator was paid off, the evidence disappeared, and Adrian looked away. I was ashamed. The woman I thought loved me had tried to murder me. My own brother was behind it. I couldn't face it, so I buried it, became bitter, pushed everyone away. It was easier than admitting the truth. Sam moved to kneel beside his wheelchair, taking his hands in hers. Why are you telling me now? Because I love you. because I trust you, and because James is right about one thing. You deserve to know exactly what kind of family you're getting involved with. No, Sam said firmly. I deserve to know exactly what kind of man I'm in love with. And you know what I see? I see someone who survived the worst kind of betrayal, but didn't let it destroy his capacity to love. That's not weakness, Adrian. That's incredible strength. Tears filled Adrian's eyes. How do you do that? Do what? Find light in the darkest places. Before she could respond, Margaret burst into the room. The press is outside, dozens of them. And, she hesitated, Catherine is giving an interview on the front steps. Adrian's face hardened. What? They wheeled to the security monitors. Sure enough, Catherine stood on the mansion's steps, looking elegant and tearful as cameras flashed around her. I can't stay silent any longer, she was saying. The guilt is eating me alive. Adrian deserves to know the truth. She's trying to control the narrative, Sam realized. Get ahead of the story. Mr. Cole, Margaret said urgently, what do you want to do? Adrian looked at Sam, something shifting in his expression. I want to tell the truth, all of it. No more hiding. Are you sure? Sam asked. It could hurt the company. The company will survive. But I'm done letting them write my story. He squeezed her hand. Will you stand with me? Always. Minutes later, they emerged onto the front steps. Catherine's performance stopped mid-sentence as she saw them. The cameras swung toward Adrian, and Sam could feel him trembling slightly. But his voice was strong and clear. Yes, the accident was deliberate. Yes, I've known for months. And yes, Catherine and my brother James were behind it. The crowd erupted in questions, but Adrian continued. I have proof. All of it. The original police reports, security footage, bank transfers. I've kept it all waiting for this day. Catherine's face went white. Adrian, please. I'm done protecting you, both of you. The full evidence has been sent to the police and the media. I suggest you contact your lawyers. As security led Catherine away, reporters shouting questions after her, Adrian addressed the cameras again. I stayed silent because I was ashamed, because it hurt too much to admit that the people closest to me had betrayed me so completely. But I'm not ashamed anymore. He reached for Sam's hand. I found real love, real loyalty, in the most unexpected place. And it taught me that true strength isn't in hiding from pain. It's in facing it, learning from it, and choosing to love again anyway. Later, after the press had gone and the police had taken statements, Sam found Adrian in Lily's art studio. He was looking at a painting she'd done of the three of them, stick figures but full of joy. Penny, for your thoughts? She asked. I was just thinking about how different everything might have been if the accident hadn't happened. If Catherine had succeeded. He shook his head. I might never have met you. Don't. Sam knelt beside him. We can't live in what-ifs. I know. It's just, sometimes the best things in life come from the worst moments. I never thought I'd be grateful for that accident, but if it led me to you and Lily. Sam kissed him softly. Speaking of Lily, she'll be home from school soon. What should I tell her about all this? The truth. A simple version, but the truth. She deserves that. You're good with her, you know. She told me yesterday that she wished you were her dad. Adrian's eyes filled with tears. Really? Really, Sam smiled. And you know what? Sometimes the family you choose is better than the family you're born with. Adrian pulled her close. I love you, Sam Hayes. You and Lily. You're all the family I need. Outside, police cars. We're taking Catherine away in handcuffs. James would be next. The media would talk about it for weeks. But inside that quiet studio, surrounded by a child's artwork and holding each other close, Sam and Adrian had found something more powerful than any scandal. They'd found home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be trials, testimony, public scrutiny, but they would face it together, stronger for having survived the storm. And somewhere in the city, a little girl was painting another picture of her new family, one built not on blood or wealth, but on love, trust, and second chances. The jury has reached a verdict. The courtroom fell silent as Sam squeezed Adrian's hand. After 3 weeks of testimony, the trial of James Cole and Catherine Marshall was finally ending. Lily sat on Sam's other side, drawing quietly in her sketchbook. Too young to fully understand the proceedings, but old enough to know they were important. The judge's voice echoed through the chamber. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, how do you find the defendants? We find the defendants guilty. The words seemed to hang in the air. Sam felt Adrian's hand tighten around hers as the rest of the verdicts were read. Guilty of conspiracy, of fraud, of obstruction of justice. James and Catherine's faces turned ashen as they were led away in handcuffs. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed around them. "Mr. Cole, how do you feel about the verdict?" Adrian faced the cameras with quiet dignity. "Justice has been served. That's all I'll say about my brother and Ms. Marshall. From now on, I'm focusing on the future, my company, my foundation, and most importantly, my family." He smiled at Sam and Lily, who stood proudly beside his wheelchair. The cameras flashed, frantically, capturing the image that would appear in next day's papers, not of a broken man, but of one who had found something far more precious than revenge. Later that evening, they sat in the garden of the mansion. Lily was chasing fireflies while Sam and Adrian watched from the patio. "It's really over," Sam said softly. "The trial is, but something else is just beginning." Adrian reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. "The adoption papers came through today." Sam's eyes filled with tears as she opened the envelope. There it was in black and white, Adrian's petition to adopt Lily. "Are you sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Adrian watched Lily dancing in the twilight. "She's been my daughter in my heart for months now. I just want to make it official, if you both want that." "Lily!" Sam called. "Can you come here for a minute?" The little girl ran over, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Look what I caught!" She opened her hands to show a gently glowing firefly, which buzzed away as she giggled. "Sweetheart," Adrian said, "I want to ask you something important. You know how you've been calling me Mr. Adrian?" Lily nodded. "Well, I was wondering, how would you feel about calling me Dad instead?" Lily's eyes went wide. "Really? Like for real?" "For real. I want to adopt you, make you officially my daughter, but only if you want that too." Lily looked at her mother, who nodded encouragingly, then launched herself into Adrian's arms. "Yes, yes, yes, yes." Adrian held her tight, his eyes meeting. Sam's over their daughter's head. The love she saw there took her breath away. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The foundation was officially launched, with Sam at the helm. They called it Second Chances, a scholarship program for single parents wanting to continue their education. The first class of recipients included 20 mothers and fathers, all determined to build better lives for their families. Adrian threw himself into being a father with the same passion he brought to everything else. He converted part of his home office into a homework area for Lily, complete with an art corner. Their evening routine now included him helping her with math problems and reading bedtime stories. One night, Sam came home late from the foundation to find them both in the art studio. Adrian was teaching Lily about perspective drawing, his wheelchair positioned carefully to help her get the right angle. "See," he was saying, "sometimes things look different depending on where you're standing. The trick is to find the view that shows the truth. Like how you look different now." Lily asked innocently. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "In the old pictures, you're standing up, but you look sad. Now you're in your chair, but you smile all the time." Sam watched from the doorway as Adrian hugged their daughter. "That's because I found something better than being able to stand up. I found you and your mom." Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Sam found Adrian in his study. He was looking at an old photo, himself mountain climbing, standing tall against a spectacular view. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but not as much as I used to. That man in the photo, he had everything except what really mattered." Sam perched on the arm of his wheelchair, a familiar position now. "And what really matters? This, us, a family built on love and choice, not obligation or status." He set the photo down. "Which reminds me, there's something else I want to ask you." Sam's heart skipped a beat as Adrian reached into his desk drawer. "The adoption papers for Lily are just the beginning. I want us to be a real family in every way." He pulled out a small velvet box, and Sam's breath caught. "Adrian, Samantha Hayes," he said, opening the box to reveal a beautiful but understated ring. "Will you marry me?" Sam looked at the ring, then at the man holding it, the man who had overcome betrayal to love again, who had chosen her and Lily, who had shown her that true strength came in many forms. "Yes," she whispered, tears falling freely now. "Yes to everything." As Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger, they could hear Lily's soft footsteps in the hallway. They turned to find her standing in the doorway in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Did she say yes?" Lily asked sleepily. Adrian laughed. "You knew about this?" "Daddy asked my permission last week," Lily said proudly, using her new name for Adrian. "He said we had to make sure you'd say yes, Mommy." Sam gathered her daughter into their embrace. as if there was ever any doubt. Outside, the garden lights twinkled like stars, and somewhere in the city, the printing presses were rolling with tomorrow's headline, Cole Empire, Heir to Wed, a modern fairy tale. But the real story wasn't in the papers. It was right here, in this room, where three people who had been broken in different ways had found healing in each other's love. The road ahead would have its challenges. There would be society gossip, business pressures, and the everyday complications of blending their lives. But as they held each other close, they knew one thing for certain. They were stronger together than they ever were apart. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright. Sam stood at the window of her bridal suite in the mansion, watching the garden being transformed. Unlike the elaborate society weddings that usually graced the Cole estate, this celebration was intimate and personal. The guests were people who had been part of their journey. Margaret, Mike the physical therapist, Mrs. Rodriguez, the foundation's scholarship recipients, and a few close friends. "Mommy, look!" Lily twirled in her flower girl dress, the purple sash matching the wildflowers in her basket. "Do I look pretty?" "You look beautiful, sweetheart." Sam knelt to adjust her daughter's crown of flowers. "Are you ready for your special job?" "Duh, I practiced with Daddy yesterday. He said I'm the best flower girl ever." Sam smiled, remembering how Adrian had spent an hour in the garden with Lily, teaching her exactly how to scatter the petals. He took his role as her father as seriously as he took running his company, maybe even more so. A knock at the door revealed Margaret, looking elegant in her maid of honor dress. "It's time to get you ready," she said, her usual efficiency softened by genuine warmth. As Margaret helped her into her wedding dress, simple and elegant, perfect for a garden ceremony, Sam thought about how much had changed in a year. She'd walked into this mansion desperate for a job and found a home instead, found love in the most unexpected place. "Adrian's asking about you," Margaret said as she arranged. Sam's veil. "He's nervous." "Adrian Cole nervous?" Sam laughed. "The man who faces down board meetings without breaking a sweat? This matters more." Margaret's eyes were knowing. "You matter more." Another knock interrupted them. Mrs. Rodriguez entered, dabbing at her eyes. "Oh, mijita, you look like an angel. And look who I found wandering the halls." She stepped aside to reveal Mike, the physical therapist, looking uncomfortable in his suit. "Sorry to interrupt, but Adrian's driving everyone crazy downstairs. He wanted me to make sure you hadn't changed your mind." Sam shook her head, smiling. "Tell him I'll be there. Tell him—" She paused. "Tell him he's stuck with us now." The garden was a vision of natural beauty. Wildflowers lined the aisle, their colors echoing the sunset. Chairs were arranged in a semicircle, leaving plenty of space for Adrian's wheelchair to move freely. The guests were already seated, creating an atmosphere of joyful anticipation. Adrian waited at the altar, looking handsome in his suit. His eyes never left the garden doors, waiting for his first glimpse of his bride. Beside him, a small table held 3 candles, one for each of them, ready for the family unity ceremony they'd planned. The music began, not the traditional wedding march, but a gentle melody that Lily had helped choose. The garden doors opened and Lily appeared first, scattering purple and white petals with careful precision. When she reached Adrian, she gave him a huge hug before taking her place. Then Sam appeared, and Adrian's breath caught. She walked down the aisle alone, no one giving her away because she wasn't being given. She was choosing this, choosing him, choosing their family. When she reached him, she knelt beside his wheelchair so they were at eye level, just as she had done so many times before. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi," he whispered back, his eyes shining. "You look beautiful." The ceremony was simple, but meaningful. They had written their own vows, speaking from the heart about second chances and unexpected love. When it came time for the family unity ceremony, Lily joined them at the altar. "These 3 candles represent our past lives," the officiant explained. "Separate, but still burning bright. Now together, you'll light a new candle, joining your flames as you join your lives." Adrian's hands shook slightly as he held his candle. Sam steadied them with her own, and Lily helped too, her small fingers wrapping around both their hands. Together, they lit the central candle, its flame burning strong and true. "By the power vested in me," the officiant said, "I now pronounce you husband and wife, and officially declare you a family." The reception was filled with laughter and joy. The scholarship recipients shared stories of how the foundation had changed their lives. Mrs. Rodriguez cried through her toast, blessing them in Spanish and English. Margaret finally relaxed enough to dance, dragged onto the floor by an enthusiastic Lily. As the evening wore on, Sam and Adrian found a quiet moment alone in their garden. The fairy lights twinkled overhead, and music drifted softly from the reception. "Happy?" Adrian asked, pulling her onto his lap. "Perfect," she replied, resting her head on his shoulder. "Although I think Lily's stealing the show." They watched their daughter twirl on the dance floor, now teaching Mike a complicated sequence of steps she'd invented. "I never thought I'd have this," Adrian said softly. "After the accident, I thought my life was over, but it was just beginning." "That's the thing about life," Sam said. "Sometimes the worst moments lead us exactly where we need to be." "Speaking of where we need to be," Adrian smiled mysteriously, "I have a surprise for you both." He wheeled them back to the reception, calling Lily over. "Remember that secret project we were working on?" he asked her. "Want to show Mummy?" Lily bounced with excitement as she led them to a display easel covered with a cloth. With a flourish, she pulled it away to reveal architectural plans. "What is this?" Sam asked, studying the drawings. "Our new home," Adrian explained. "A place designed for all of us. Wider hallways for my wheelchair, an art studio for Lily, an office for your foundation work, and," he paused, "a nursery, if you want." Sam's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the plans. The house was beautiful, but more importantly, it was thoughtfully designed for their unique family. "The nursery was Lily's idea," Adrian added. "She wants to be a big sister." "Really?" Sam looked at her daughter, who nodded enthusiastically. "I asked Santa for a baby brother or sister," Lily announced. "Daddy said we should ask you first." Sam laughed through her tears. "Well, we'll have to see what Santa can do." Later that night, after Lily had fallen asleep on Margaret's lap and the last guests had gone home, Sam and Adrian danced in their own way, her sitting on his lap as he wheeled them slowly around the garden. "I love you," she whispered. "Thank you for giving us a home." "Thank you for giving me a family," he replied, "for showing me that love isn't about what a person can or can't do. It's about who they are in their heart." Above them, a shooting star streaked across the sky. Lily had always said they should make a wish when they saw one, but tonight neither Sam nor Adrian needed to wish for anything. They had everything they wanted right here. Their story wasn't a typical fairy tale. There was no handsome prince on a white horse, no magical transformation to make everything perfect. Instead, there was something better, real love growing stronger through challenges, a family built on choice rather than chance, and the knowledge that sometimes the most beautiful stories are the ones that don't follow the usual path. As they held each other under the stars, they knew that this wasn't really an ending. It was a beginning of their marriage, of their family, of their forever. And while their road might not always be smooth, they would travel it together, stronger for having found each other, richer for having chosen love. After all, isn't that what real fairy tales are about? Not the perfect endings, but the perfect matches. Not the easy paths, but the worthwhile ones. Not the stories we're given, but the ones we choose to write together. And this story, this was just their first chapter.